In 1992, a young mother in Lake City, Florida, was found dead, her newborn baby lying in her arms, barely clinging to life. Her name was Angela Maxwell, just 20 years old, full of dreams, love, and laughter. For over 30 years, her killer has never been found. No forced entry, no witnesses, only questions, and a family still waiting for justice. Who killed Angela Maxwell Moran and why? Tonight, we uncover the truth behind one of Florida's most haunting unsolved murders. This is Real Crime Pulse. If you believe Angela deserves justice, subscribe, hit the like button, and let's keep her story alive. Before Angela Maxwell's name ever appeared in a police report, she was known for her laughter, the kind that filled a room and made everyone else smile. She wasn't just a sister or a mother. She was a light, bright, confident, and full of life. Angela grew up in northern Florida, raised by her aunt in a small, tight-knit community called Olustee. Her family remembers her as a natural performer, someone who loved to sing, dance, and tell stories. Her younger sister Kenyatta says, Angela was beautiful, confident, and always smiling. She could walk into a room and just lift everyone's mood. Her love for music was endless. At family gatherings, Angela was always the one singing in the kitchen, using a wooden spoon as a microphone. At church, her voice echoed through the small chapel, soulful and strong, especially when she sang "Maybe God is Trying to Tell You Something" from The Color Purple. It became her song, her signature, a reflection of her faith and her spirit. But behind the music and laughter was a woman working tirelessly to provide for her children. At just 20 years old, Angela was already a mother of 3, 2 daughters and a newborn son. She worked hard to make ends meet, taking whatever job she could find in Lake City, Florida. Every paycheck mattered. Every dollar went toward her kids and their diapers, their milk, their clothes, their future. Her family admired her strength. Angela was independent, Kenyatta recalled. She didn't wait for anyone to take care of her. She did it all herself. Neighbors often saw her carrying groceries upstairs with a baby in one arm and a toddler clinging to her side. Yet somehow she never looked tired. She would wave, smile, and ask others how they were doing. That was Angela, always thinking of everyone else first. Her friends described her as bold but kind-hearted. She didn't tolerate disrespect, and she never let anyone push her around. But when it came to her loved ones, she had a gentle heart. She protected her younger siblings growing up and even stood up for kids who were bullied at school. Years later, a man approached Kenyatta and said, "Your sister once defended me when no one else would." Angela's life was full of simple joys, singing in the church choir, dancing around her apartment, cooking Sunday dinners for her family. She had dreams of building a better life for her children. She wanted to buy a house, maybe even start her own business one day. She had no idea that her story was about to end so suddenly. On the night of August 3, 1992, Angela came home after a long day at work. She was tired but happy, it was payday. She had her cash with her and her 2 youngest children by her side. She stopped to talk with her neighbor and best friend around 11 p.m., just chatting about her day. When she closed the door to her apartment that night, no one could have known. It would be the last time anyone saw her alive. Morning sunlight began to creep through the blinds of Angela Maxwell's small apartment on August 4, 1992. Outside, kids were getting ready for school and neighbors were heading to work. It was an ordinary summer morning in Lake City, Florida. But inside Angela's apartment, something was terribly wrong. Her 2-year-old daughter sat crying near the doorway, wearing a soaked diaper. Her baby brother, barely a year old, was lying in his crib, hungry and restless. The television was still on. But Angela, the one person who never left her children alone, was nowhere to be found. At first, neighbors thought maybe she had run to the store or gone to a friend's house. But as the hours passed and Angela didn't return, worry turned to panic. Her friend and neighbor, who had spoken with her the night before, knocked on her door again. No answer. She pushed the door open and it wasn't locked. What she saw made her freeze. Angela's apartment looked disturbed. Her purse was still on the couch, her wallet and cash untouched. The baby's bottle sat on the kitchen counter half full. Nothing made sense. Angela never would have left her children alone, not even for a minute. The neighbor called Angela's sister Kenyatta, who rushed over. When I got there, Kenyatta later said, I knew something was wrong. My heart just dropped. Within hours, the Lake City Police Department was on the scene. Officers began searching nearby streets, ditches, and wooded areas. They questioned neighbors, friends, and Angela's co-workers. Flyers went up around the community. Angela's photo, her bright smile and deep brown eyes, was everywhere. Days turned into nights. The search expanded across the county. Volunteers joined in, combing through fields and abandoned buildings. Angela's family prayed for a miracle. Maybe she'd been kidnapped and was still alive somewhere, waiting to come home. But on August 6th, 2 days after she disappeared, a construction worker driving along US Highway 90 made a horrifying discovery. He noticed something strange in a wooded area just off the road, a figure partially hidden under branches and leaves. When he approached, he realized what it was. It was Angela. She was lying face down in the dirt, her body bruised, her clothes torn. It was clear she had been brutally beaten and left for dead. The autopsy would later confirm what everyone feared. Angela Maxwell had been raped and murdered. She was only 23 years old. The news devastated the community. Lake City had seen tragedy before, but this was different. This was personal. Everyone knew Angela, her laugh, her kindness, her children. The idea that someone could do something so violent, so cruel, to a young mother was almost impossible to comprehend. Her family was shattered. Kenyatta said through tears, she didn't deserve this. She was just trying to live her life to take care of her babies. The police now faced an urgent question. Who would want to harm Angela Maxwell, and why? The only clue investigators had was that Angela had recently started seeing someone new, a man she'd met through a friend, a man who, according to neighbors, had been acting strangely in the days before she disappeared. That man's name was Hugh Davis. After Angela's body was discovered, investigators immediately turned their focus to the people closest to her. Family, co-workers, neighbors, and especially the men she had recently been seen with. One name came up again and again, Hugh Davis. Hugh was a local man in his late 20s who had met Angela just a few weeks before her death. To outsiders, he seemed polite, even quiet. But those who knew him better described a different side. A temper that flared without warning. A jealous streak that bordered on obsession. Angela's friends told police she had been trying to end things with him. She'd confided in a neighbor that Hugh had begun showing up unannounced at her apartment and calling her constantly. She told me he made her nervous, one neighbor later said. She said she didn't like how angry he got when she didn't answer the phone. The last time anyone saw Angela alive was around 11 p.m. on August 3rd, when she spoke with her neighbor through the open door of her apartment. Just minutes later, another tenant heard raised voices, a man and a woman arguing, followed by a loud thud. Then silence. Police quickly brought Hugh in for questioning. His demeanor was cold, emotionless. When asked where he'd been on the night of August 3rd, he claimed he was home alone. No witnesses, no alibi. Detectives noticed scratches on his arms and a bruise on his jaw. But when asked about them, he simply said he'd been working on his car. Investigators grew more suspicious when they searched his apartment. Inside, they found a pair of shoes with mud consistent with the wooded area where Angela's body was found. There were also faint traces of blood on his shirt, though DNA testing in 1992 was still limited and could not definitively link it to Angela. But the most chilling evidence came from a small detail only the killer would know. Angela had been wearing a gold chain the night she disappeared, a necklace her sister had given her as a birthday gift. It was missing when her body was found. 2 days later, that very same necklace turned up in Hugh's dresser drawer. When confronted, Hugh claimed Angela had given it to him, but her family insisted she never took it off. That necklace was everything to her, Kenyatta said. There's no way she gave it away. Despite the mounting evidence, the case began to stall. Forensic testing was still in its early stages, and much of the physical evidence was inconclusive. Without a confession or solid DNA match, the state attorney's office hesitated to move forward. Hugh Davis was released and vanished from Lake City soon after. For Angela's family, the release of their prime suspect felt like a second betrayal. We thought we were finally going to get justice, Kenyatta said. But he walked free. Just like that. Years passed and leads dried up. Angela's murder became one of dozens of unsolved cases collecting dust in Florida's cold case files. Her children grew up without their mother. Her sister carried the weight of unanswered questions, and the man many believed to be responsible disappeared into the world, unpunished. But time has a way of revealing secrets. Decades later, as technology advanced and cold cases were reopened, investigators decided to take another look at Angela Maxwell's file, and what they found would reignite hope for justice once more. For 3 long decades, the name Angela Maxwell faded from police briefings and newsroom headlines. Her case sat in a dusty box filed under cold case. Her killer had slipped through the cracks, but her family never stopped hoping. In 2023, everything changed. A new generation of detectives at the Lake City Police Department, in partnership with Project Cold Case and the University of North Florida's Applied Journalism program, decided to revisit Angela's file. They were armed with something the 1992 investigators never had: modern forensic science and DNA technology capable of uncovering microscopic truths buried in old evidence. The first thing they did was reopen the evidence locker. Inside were sealed envelopes containing fingernail scrapings, hair fibers, and a blood-stained pillowcase collected from Angela's apartment. The chain of custody was intact, meaning it could be tested. Again, forensic experts at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement carefully extracted the DNA and began cross-referencing it with national databases. Weeks passed, then months, but finally something appeared: a partial DNA profile that didn't belong to Angela or anyone in her family. The results weren't a full match, but they were promising enough to send shockwaves through the investigative team. It suggested the killer might still be alive, and might have left behind more evidence than anyone realized. Investigators began re-interviewing people connected to the case. Angela's best friend, former neighbors, and even her old co-workers were contacted. Many were now in their 50s or 60s, but their memories of that summer night in 1992 were still vivid. One neighbor recalled seeing a dark-colored car parked outside Angela's building around midnight, something that hadn't made it into the original police report. Another remembered hearing footsteps running down the stairwell shortly after the sound of an argument. These forgotten fragments began painting a clearer picture of what may have happened in those final hours. Then came the biggest revelation. The name Hugh Davis surfaced once. Again, police learned that Davis had a long record of violent behavior in the years following Angela's death: assault charges, restraining orders, and several reports of domestic abuse. In 2009, he'd even been arrested for attacking a woman in Jacksonville, though charges were later dropped. Detectives sent his DNA sample, collected from that old case, to be compared with the partial DNA found on Angela's pillowcase. The lab results were inconclusive, but enough to keep him on the radar. Investigators now believe Hugh may have been the last person to see Angela alive. For Angela's sister, Kenyatta, this news brought back a flood of emotions. "It's like reopening a wound that never really healed," she said. "But if it means finding out what really happened to her, then we'll go through that pain again." Meanwhile, reporters began digging into the case as part of a collaborative journalism effort. They uncovered old police documents, interviewed retired detectives, and brought Angela's story back into the public eye. Local TV stations aired features about her, reigniting community interest and sparking dozens of new tips. For the first time in 30 years, the family felt a renewed sense of hope. They believed justice could still be served, that someone, somewhere might know the truth. Angela's daughter, now a grown woman with children of her own, said something powerful in an interview. "I've lived my whole life wondering who took my mom from me. I don't care how many years have passed, I just want the truth." Her words struck deep, because this wasn't just about solving a crime anymore. It was about healing a family broken by decades of silence. And as investigators continued to dig deeper, they realized that the killer's trail might not have gone completely cold after all. As the reopened investigation pushed forward, the name Hugh Davis became the focal point. Detectives retraced his movements from the summer of 1992, hoping to find a connection that could finally bring justice to Angela's family. But there was a major obstacle: time. 3 decades had passed since the murder. Memories had faded. Witnesses had died or moved away, and some evidence, though preserved, had degraded. Still, the investigators refused to give up. Records revealed that Hugh and Angela had known each other briefly. Friends recalled seeing them talk near her apartment complex weeks before her death. One even said Hugh had expressed romantic interest in her. But Angela wasn't interested. Detectives believe rejection may have sparked his anger, creating a dangerous mix of obsession and rage. A former resident of Angela's apartment building told police he remembered seeing a man matching Hugh's description hanging around the stairwell days before the murder. He didn't live there, the man said. But I saw him more than once just watching. Those statements, combined with the partial DNA evidence, were enough for police to label Hugh Davis a person of interest. However, without a complete DNA match or a direct witness, an arrest warrant couldn't be issued. The case remained open, frustratingly close to resolution, yet just out of reach. For Angela's sister, Kenyatta, it was another emotional blow. She had hoped this would be the breakthrough moment her family had waited for all these years. "We've lived every day with this hole in our hearts," she said softly. "It's like the world moved on, but we're still stuck in 1992. Still, the family continued to push for awareness. They organized memorial vigils, spoke at community events, and worked with cold case advocates to keep Angela's story alive. Project Cold Case featured Angela in its national spotlight campaign, reminding viewers that justice delayed does not have to mean justice denied. In 2024, local reporters revisited the story once more, this time producing a short documentary titled, "Who Killed Angela Maxwell?" The episode reignited public interest and several new tips came in. One caller claimed to have seen Hugh Davis arguing with Angela near her apartment that very week. Another said she'd overheard rumors in the neighborhood years ago about a man who got away with something bad. The tips are still being reviewed today. But one thing is clear: Angela's case is not forgotten. Her story has become more than just a file number or a headline. It's a symbol of strength, loss, and love. Her sister Kenyatta continues to hold on to faith that someone will come forward with the truth. "I don't care if it's 30 years or 50, she said. "I'll never stop fighting for her." Even after all this time, Angela's presence still lingers. In her children's laughter, in her sister's memories, and in the songs she used to sing in church. Maybe God is trying to tell you something. The same soulful melody that once filled their home now serves as a reminder that sometimes the answers we seek arrive in their own time. As the sun sets over Lake City, a quiet stillness falls over the apartment complex where Angela once lived. The walls may have new paint and new tenants, but the memory of that tragic night in 1992 hasn't faded. Somewhere out there, someone knows what happened to Angela Maxwell. And until that truth is spoken aloud, her family and her community will keep her story alive. Because justice for Angela isn't just about finding her killer. It's about honoring her life and making sure the world never forgets her name.